When concerning my father, Nelson A. Battles Jr., he passed away in 1983 in King County, Washington. His death certificate says he had some kind of pulmonary rupture and hypertension, high blood pressure. I was told my whole life that he passed away of a stroke or something like that. But my brother actually passed away as well from a heart issue. And being that I was there to see his, I was there with my brother when he went into the hospital. I saw him. I spent the night there. I stayed there every second, every minute because he couldn't speak. And I wanted to be there to, translate or just see what they're saying or just, I wanted to be there. So I was there for 2 weeks straight. He was in the hospital and I was there every single day. I was there for every single hour. I slept in the little chair next to his bed. I was in there when they brought the machines in and they actually looked at his heart. They actually, I don't even know what they did. It's like some kind of echo machine. I think that's what they called it, an echo. I don't know. All I can tell you is they looked all up in that boy's heart and he didn't have an enlarged heart. And a year later, he ends up dying from an enlarged heart. And he had bruises on his hands. He had ligature marks on his neck where he had been, he had defense wounds. He had chain marks on his hand where you could tell he, was struggling. And they said that his eyes had hemorrhaging consistent of being strangled. But that's not what they put down as the cause of death. They put his cause of death down as heart related because he had heart problems previously. And I'm like, but he had bruises on him. He was defending himself and he had marks on his neck and he has hemorrhaging around his eyes consistent of strangulation. So that tells me he was fighting for his life. They didn't do anything. And they didn't do, well, let me rephrase that. What happened was I saw his body the first night when he died. My cousin drove me up to his baby's mother's house, which is where he was when he passed away. And when we got there, Bonnie Watson Mortuary was there to pick his body up. We saw the truck outside, and I went in, seen his body on the floor. I don't want to get into it too much, but I saw him. I saw his body, and he was laying on the ground on the floor in the living room with his hands balled up in really, really, really tight fists, and they were like in front of his body. And he had something around his wrist. I didn't know what was going on. I kind of thought they had covered him up or something like that. I didn't know what was going on. His baby mama said that he was in the living room sleeping. That's what she told me. That at that moment, that was the day he died. That's what she told me. That he was in the living room playing video games, sleeping, but he was naked. Okay, when they took his body, he only had on boxers. Keep in mind, my brother was a longshoreman. He had went to work that morning and got a job, and his partner said that they were scheduled to come back to work at 1 o'clock, so he wouldn't have gotten naked. You know what I mean? From what I understand, he went over to her house to play on her video games because he had left his TV over there with his games attached because his children were there, and she went out of town, so he watched his children, at her house instead of his house for whatever reasons, and he brought his TV over there because they didn't have one that was working, or I don't know, but he had left the TV over there, and I believe that was the following Monday. Matter of fact, it was Martin Luther King Day that they actually killed my brother on. And then 4 days later, they had him, well, the next day, they had his body moved from Bonnie Watson Mortuary to Dayspring and Fitch, which happens to be a friend of our foster mother. And what they did, they said they were going to cremate him, and they weren't going to have his body at the funeral and all this stuff. So they wanted us to view his body. They didn't want nobody else to come, only his immediate family. Even though when we got there, it was friends of his baby's mothers there and everything. They wouldn't allow any blood relative cousins to come, but they allowed friends of the baby's mother to come. So we got in there, and he was laying on the table, and I saw the bruises on his arms, and I saw the bruises on his hands, and I was like, okay, he was struggling. Then I peeled his neck, because he was kind of like a little chunky dude. So his neck, he was laying down, so his neck was like this. So I peeled his neck back like this, and I could see it was like swollen and red, and you can tell something like a necklace was choking him, or had choked him. And then on his hand, you could see where the necklace, the indent of his necklace was in, you know, his hand, like his hand was balled up at his face. And then on his chest, it was like, I don't even remember what it was exactly, but it was a bruise. And it looked like a B or an A, but it was like he was laying on some toys, or, you know, like the refrigerator magnets. It was like he was laying on one of those things. And somebody was on his back, choking him from behind. And this arm was probably up in his neck or something like this. And then this arm had, where was it? Oh, he had, you know, the bruises were right here. I'm showing y'all my fat. This ain't the intention of the video. No, but really, he had bruises right here. You could tell. And it was like about 4-inch bruise. It was pretty big. I was like, you could tell he was defending himself. So that night, that day when they called me, they told me he died in his sleep. They told me he died peacefully in his sleep. So when I saw those bruises, that brought up a red flag for me. So what I did next is I went to the mortician, I guess that's what you call him. I went to, you know, the son of the owners, which actually went to school with my brother. And I told him, I said, I see all these bruises and defensive wounds on him, you know, and he wrote down everything he saw. Everything that I told him, he wrote it down. And he said, okay, what I'm going to do, because me and Nelson were friends, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go have my embalming, the mortician, you know, whoever does the embalming, he said, I'm going to have him look at him. And then if he sees the same thing that I see, then we're going to call the police. He said, I'll let you know by the end of the day. So the end of the day came, and what I did is I called the police station in the town where he died at. And they told me, yes, there was an investigation open up because they saw bruises on him as well. And I said, well, okay. So I started asking questions, you know. I asked, you know, like, what they said was that, let me get this right, because it was 3 years ago. They told me to call the medical examiners and give them the case number. And the medical examiner would tell me, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. They told me that his baby mother, because she was a nurse or whatever, that she gave them such a good explanation of his medical history that they decided that he didn't need to get examined by the medical examiner. So he was never even, the autopsy was never done on him. And so what I did is I called the police and I let them know what I saw. And actually the next day, the police contacted the mortuary and told them they had to bring his body up to the King County Examiner's office within 45 minutes. And they brought his body up there, and of course he didn't have any bruises on him anymore. Nothing was foul play. They didn't see anything foul. They just saw a little dark mark on his forehead, and that's it. He said he didn't see the ligature marks on his neck. He didn't see the bruises on his arm. I didn't get a chance to take the pictures of his neck, but I did take pictures of his arm and his hand, and you can clearly see there's bruises there. And I'm like, okay, that was only 5 days, you know, really 1 day after I actually saw his body, but 5 days after he had died. So after that, you know, it was just really stressful. I ended up getting into it with my family. Of course, they were very upset that I would even have the audacity to request for autopsy to be done. I'm like, are you serious? Would you want to know? You know, he died at his baby's mom's house. And they were like, you know, well, you know, they're going to do one anyway because you made them. But, you know, you didn't have to do that. And then they just had this attitude problem with me. And they totally cut me out of everything dealing with his service, which upset me terribly. Terribly. And what else? I'm trying to think. Oh, so I started investigating, you know, like, what is wrong with these people? Why are they acting like this? And keep in mind, the year before, my brother did have a stroke. And I told him, I said, something's strange about whatever happened to you, because you were fine. You shouldn't have had a stroke like that. And then I'd say, so maybe a year went by, because he died maybe a year and some months after his stroke. Well, he came to me and he told me that he and I were the only biological children of my father, Nelson. And I was like, what? You know, we kind of suspected that the baby sister wasn't, you know, my dad's, because she looked just like my stepfather, or our foster father, now that we know the truth. Or really our foster mother's boyfriend. That's what he was. You know, but the older one, the older sister, I was kind of confused. He didn't go into detail, but he did say that there was some fraud that was done down at the waterfront, because my brother was a longshoreman and my dad was a longshoreman, and my brother inherited my dad's A card. So sorry, I'm trying to get my mind together, because, you know, my mind, I got PTSD, and thinking about this whole situation upsets my spirit on a whole nother level. Y'all just don't know. And to know that they're actually still harassing me is even more devastating. That's why I'm making these video diaries, to get my story out the best way I can. I thought about trying to write it. I've already put so many complaints out. I made so many phone calls. I've got so much evidence, and it's not helping. So after I figured out that something was going on, I started looking into, like, okay, what's really going on? So my brother was supposedly named Nelson Alexander Battles Jr. Well, my dad was Nelson A. Battles Jr. So I'm like, why would this woman name her? That's not how you know, order juniors in the sequential order, and you know, it's either second, third. You know, it's not. He should have been a third. basically. So what happened was she didn't give me any explanation for it. She never gave us an explanation. But what's going on is this. My name is Tamara, Tamara. Well, her name is Tamara, but her name is supposed to be spelled Tamaera. And what she did is she put herself down as being the wife of my father. So what she did is she just started using the last name Battles. So my name is Tamara Battles. Her name is Tamara Freeman. But she's been using the last name Battles, claiming that she's a widow, even though she was married, or claiming that she was married to what I felt was my stepfather who raised me, Joseph Gordon. She was never neither one of theirs wife. So what I figured out was there was some things left to me and my brother via our father, and they basically changed or altered our names to commit identity theft, you know. And when we reached the age of 18, we probably weren't even supposed to be living, you know, to keep it real. And that's the slavery that's going on in this in King County. So I went into these court cases, and I want to give you a little information on my background. So my stepfather was a retired federal agent, supervisor physician, a special agent in charge. He also worked for the FBI, Secret Service. He worked for King County. He was a deputy sheriff in Renton, Washington at one point in time, and he was a security guard for King County, Washington, off and on after he retired from the federal government. He ran an investigation firm out of our home, and when I was young, you know, I worked for him. He taught me how to type at 7 years old. You know, I was doing typing tutor. We were doing computer games and doing things on the DOS computer. I realized now I was in training. And for his private investigation firm, when he would go out and conduct investigations, which he would investigate new hires for the federal government, he would do the background checks on them, and it was fun, you know. I got to see his method. He told me why he did what he did and why he investigated this and that and who he went and saw, and you know, it was very extensive. So I am aware of background checks, skip tracing, all of that. I went to school to be a legal secretary, so I have background on producing legal documents. I also have been harassed by the police and assaulted and jumped on by the police, which forced me to go a little deeper into investigating the law. And so I have a hood scholarship in, you know, a jailhouse lawyer. Is that what they call it? But I actually am a power of attorney, in fact, and I am aware of my rights, and I'm aware of what is right and what is wrong. And right now, the paperwork that was filed into those court cases from my father's estate, they don't have any seals on them, and they don't have any signatures on them. They're not valid. There was names mistaken, and the addresses are different. So right now I don't even know what my real name is. I do know that my social security account had the name Ta Battle, which is what I changed my name to. After I figured out about the identity theft and I started thinking about all of the things that's been going on with me in my life, I changed my name because I didn't want them having access to me anymore. I changed it to the Ta Battle. Well, what happened is somebody started using the name T Battle. And then somebody started going to the credit bureaus and sending me credit reports with my old names on them, and like, it's really, really freaky. I got like 4 credit reports with 3 different names on them, you know, all in 1 month from 3 different bureaus. You know what I'm saying? Which I'm surprised that the bureau would even do that. That tells me they're in on the fraud too. All of these entities are entangled in the fraud. And they do what they can to keep the actual slave from knowing that their monies are being basically embezzled. That's what this is. This is an embezzlement from my dad's estate. Instead of giving the money to me, what they did is they gave it to a lady that claimed to be a widow, and she was not a widow. Then there was plenty of assets missing out of my father's account. Okay, he sued the King County. He won some monies. He passed away in May. The court case was settled in August after he passed away. They didn't make any mention of what monies was collected, but they did say a Tamara Battles went and collected the money. Well, I'm the only Tamara Battles. We know that this other lady's name is not Tamara Battles. She claimed she was married to my father, and she wasn't. I found a marriage license, a forged marriage license, not a certificate. There was no actual marriage, period, but the license was put there to be able to use to fool people. And it was a marriage license from the state of Missouri. And in the state of Missouri, you have to file a marriage license, and then 10 days later, you have to file a marriage certificate, or else that license is invalid. And it was a false marriage license filed. And on that marriage license, it says Nelson Battles Jr. And I'm like, well, if you were getting ready to marry a Nelson Battles Jr., if this license happened in 1976, why would you have your son named Nelson Battles Jr. in 1980? My brother was born in 1981. So I began to dig even deeper. And what I found was a deed of trust on the record from my, well, I call him my stepdad, Joseph. And it was a deed of trust saying that basically he had a domestic partnership with Tamara Angela Battles, and that she could live there during the duration of the relationship. And the proceeds from the sale of the house was supposed to go to her non-biological children. That threw up a red flag for me, because like I said, I had always been told that we were all children from my father. And my brother did tell me that, but that was recently. You know, I'm 41 years old. So I don't know what's going on. All I know is my identity is being stolen. All I know is I'm being harassed, I'm being stalked by the King County and by the state of Washington. And I need some help. I need help. Yes, Kanye said that slavery is a choice, but I'm choosing not to be in slavery. And these people, I'm a runaway slave, and they got the ankle chain on me, and right now I feel like they're getting ready to try to kill me because I'm not letting go. And not only that, I have filed for disability 6 years ago in this state, and it was approved, but the actual employees in the state of Washington are the ones that are keeping me from my benefits. The federal government, the Social Security, has sent back my claim 3 times to the state of Washington for them to correct their mistakes. And I'm finding that it's actually the employees that are working for these governmental offices and city offices or whatever it may be that is doing the crime. It's the employees. And of course, you know, they have attorneys and different people. And a lot of this stuff, like I said, this has been going on with me since at least 1980, when my father, you know, had a lawsuit against them. And as of now, he had 2 pieces of property in King County, Washington, in Seattle, that are not even documented on his estate paperwork. They are on his military records. And none of that was listed in an estate case. And all of these things are supposed to go to his children, which would have been me and my brother, which my brother just, well, not just, it seems like yesterday to me, because I'm still traumatized behind it, you know. It was 3 years ago. So what I'm saying is, I'm under attack by the King County, and I'm under slavery because they are holding all my funds from me, and they're basically terrorizing my life. My bank accounts are being tampered with. Right now, I have a welfare case open, and they actually went into my welfare case and changed my name on my account. They didn't say anybody came in there and gave them false identification. They just changed the name themselves. So it is the employees in these agencies that are committing the frauds. And it's decades old. And I am basically a throwaway baby. You know, I'm a child of a man that sued a county that he later died in, the same hospital that filed the lien on his behalf 2 years previous for him getting injured in the kingdom. So I feel my PTSD acting up, so I'm going to end this video right now. I'm going to review it and see what I'm talking about, because I can't really remember. Because I'm going to upload this stuff because I feel like my life is in danger, and I want people to know what's going on with me.